welcome everyone to MiSCA 2018. This webinar is geared toward parents and coaches, but we'll likely have some students on the call who are interested in starting and growing their teams as well. We're utilizing GoToWebinar, and I want to give a shout out to iDashboards for allowing us to use this software much more professional than doing it another way like Hangouts or something like that. And it allows us to reach a lot more people in one night, and we can record it, which is a lot easier than kind of traveling around the state and doing this multiple times throughout the year. So let's start. I'm Sean Warren, that's me there, and I'm the president of the MiSCA board, and I also serve as the day-to-day league director. And I won't bore you with a long bio, but basically I've been on the MiSCA board since 2012. And what I will mention is I'm dedicated to getting more kids on bikes and the growth of MiSCA. And there's a lot that we really want to do. There's a lot that we can do, and we're making strides to get there. Every day, every race is always something a little bit different. So these are the basics that we're going to touch on tonight. I've selected topics that would be relevant to everyone on the call and also included some changes for 2018. I'll be addressing questions throughout the webinar, so if you have questions on a specific topic, please type them into the questions box of GoToWebinar. We'll also do a general Q&A at the end, but I don't think I can unmute anyone's phones, so you'll have to type them into that questions box for me to see your question. This is also being simulcast on Facebook Live, so if you have a comment on Facebook Live, I may or may not see that, but feel free to ask your questions and I'll reach out to you afterwards. If we don't cover a specific topic you're interested in, please let me know again at the end of the webinar. So let me start off by just kind of going over, the mission of Michigan Scholastic Cycling. And basically, we're here to establish and maintain safe, quality scholastic cycling programs. And that's a pretty vague statement, but basically, it's about getting, school-aged kids riding their bikes, and not necessarily in a competitive way. It's just to get more kids on bikes. And so there's a little bit more specifics down here below. And basically, we're around to establish a program that will provide support to schools and organizations wishing to establish scholastic cycling clubs and teams. We're also going to develop and maintain an interscholastic competition series to promote the sport of cycling and allow kids to build fitness and compete in a healthy outdoor environment. Lastly, we promote the value of cycling to our youth and community as a mode of transportation and a lifelong sport. I'll be the first one to admit that we've really only touched on these bottom two bullet points pretty much since the existence of MiSCA. And we'll talk about a lot of the changes that we're going through this year to hit that top bullet point to really support our schools, our coaches, and our teams to make sure that they're successful and that we can really grow this to be successful. So MiSCA was founded in 2010 under the Michigan Mountain Biking Association by Steve Kinley. He's still quite active with MiSCA. He's not on the board anymore, but he's the director emeritus, and he's coaching the Lake Orion team now, or one of their coaches. We've had a lot of change over the years, which I think has allowed us to become more nimble than any other organization I've been involved with, at least. And there aren't any 2017 highlights on this list, but we had an amazing 2017. First, we started the year by finding like-minded sponsors and supporters that really amplified our growth for the year. We went from an average of 95 riders at each race in 2016 to 198. This actually caught us by surprise, and we had to work through some challenges last year. So everyone on the call, I'm assuming maybe you had some insight into that last year, the visibility. And I want to thank you for your guidance and feedback on that. But we definitely have a solid foundation for 2018, and we learned from that experience, and we really scaled up our race operation for this year. Not only races, you'll see we're transitioning to a league model, which is how the other states around the country that have this program going have been so successful and getting more kids on bikes. And that's what we're going to cover quite a bit in this session today. We did some awesome things over the last 8 years, from one race in our first year to partnering with mountain bike promoters to grow our series. We transitioned to hosting youth-only races, all of our own. And this year, we're actually hosting 6 races. That's our most ever. And we're going to be doing that in 9 weeks, which I think is a feat for any race promoter out there. But more than that, this year we are truly becoming a league. And what does that mean? When someone asks me what MiSCA is, I usually say, we're like Little League for mountain bikes. And before this year, that may not have been the most accurate statement. So what does it mean to be a league instead of simply a race series? And that's kind of what we're focusing on in MiSCA this year. It means we have official MiSCA teams. We have certified MiSCA coaches, and our riders will be members of MiSCA for the entire year. We're going to train our coaches, foster the development of new teams, and hold events throughout the year. That means all team activities are now MiSCA activities, covered under MiSCA's insurance, which can put our volunteer coaches and team administrators at ease. Moving to a year-long program as opposed to 5-day-long events is a much different administrative structure. And as you can imagine, we're growing and adapting as the needs of the organization are changing. The next few slides will cover, how this transition is actually going to affect you. Give me just 1 second. So this slide is pretty simple to understand because it's basically how every other team-based sport works. It's also as MiSCA has loosely been operating for the past 8 years. We've always had MiSCA, at the top as an organization, and there was always teams with coaches, and there was always students inside those teams. Or maybe you raced individually, and that's fine too. But now the structure is going to be a little bit more defined. MiSCA is kind of the parent organization. Teams will join MiSCA, coaches will join teams or MiSCA if there is no team attached, and student athletes will join teams or MiSCA if they don't have a team. And that's one important differentiator too between us and other kind of team sports that are out there, is that because mountain biking is such an individual sport, you don't have to be part of a team to compete in our races. Now, if you want to participate in practices and things like that, that's where team membership would really come into play. It used to be when someone would ask me, what do I need to do to become a MiSCA team? I would just say, you show up at a race with a couple of kids and tell us your team name and you're a team. That was all you had to do. MiSCA had zero insight on the involvement into team activities throughout the year, and therefore we gave very little guidance or structure through the process of starting a new team or how to manage the team that you already had. The same with coaches and adult volunteers on these teams. Never before have we provided a real coach training or listed requirements to become a MiSCA coach. That all changes in 2018. And while we are definitely less restrictive than other coach licensing programs, we will have requirements to maintain a safe and quality program for our kids and maintain our insurance. First, one person, typically a head coach or team manager, will need to register as a MiSCA team. Currently, I have the Brighton team and the Huron Valley team are the 2 teams that I have registered so far. Registration is open now, and we'll talk about that. Actually, the link is right there on the screen, miscabike.org/register. So if you're a team manager or a head coach on the call and need to get registered, you can do that today. Before any team activities can occur, you will also be required to have at least 2 certified coaches. We're going to talk about what that means in the next couple of slides. You don't have to be affiliated with the team to become a coach or to race in the fall. There are sample team budgets as well, and various documents that will help you start your team. And you can visit miscabike.org/resources. If you haven't been to the website in a little while, it's been revamped this year. I've been working pretty hard at that. And you'll find that the structure is a little bit different. It's organized differently to kind of to mirror the way that we're organized in the organization today. The biggest change you'll probably see today is for our coaches. To become a certified MiSCA coach, you will need to register with MiSCA, complete a background check and concussion training, which the cost of is all included with your annual registration fee, and attend the MiSCA orientation for coaches. That's actually going to be the same video that you're watching today for this year. Again, for full details, you can go to the website /coach, so there's a little coaching link at the top. And registration for our coaches is not open until March 1st, so a couple days left for that. And that's because we're still finalizing our insurance, so I'm assuming there's going to be some insurance questions on this call. We don't have a whole lot of details yet. We're still waiting on an extra quote to come in, but rest assured, we're hoping to have it in place by March 1st. We're just kind of in talks at the moment. Now, that was to become a level 1 coach, that previous screen. This next screen is what it takes to be a level 2 certified coach. Now, that means you're more of like a leadership role with the kids. This means that, you need to maintain working with your team 30 to 60 hours a year. You have to hold and maintain first aid and CPR certifications, and you must attend our Ride Leader Teaching Mountain Bike Skills course that's coming up in April. We have 2 dates for that. Again, I recommend you check the MiSCA website for details and helpful links, and you can register for the courses there. You can also submit your certificates in field hours. Your field hours are reported on the MiSCA website, and the certificates are all handled through the SI Play site, which is at miscabike.org/register. Something new that I haven't talked to much of the coaches about yet is that we have a lot of demand for these Ride Leader and Teaching Mountain Bike Skills courses. And so what we're doing is we're going to limit this to 2 to 3 coaches per team. And if your team has, more than that are going to be in a leadership role, then we would waive their requirement until more courses become available, or we have more seats available in the courses that we have currently scheduled. So the registration on March 1st will open up, but it won't just be open to everyone. You'll actually have to email us at registration@miscabike.org, and you're going to get a participation code. That participation code will only be good for 2 coaches per team. If you need more, maybe 1 more coach, you have to let me know, and I'll give you a new participation code. So it's a big note for any of our head coaches or team managers on the call. Please email us at registration@miscabike.org, and we'll unlock your registration for you. We just need to know your team name, and maybe if you're the head coach, who are the 2 coaches maybe that are going to be on your team to start for your level 2. We're hoping to have more courses this summer. We're just at a bandwidth issue with our volunteers. Now, here's a grid that is on our website. Again, if you go to miscabike.org/coach, it's a more helpful format for seeing the progression from a level 1 to a level 2 coach. And we definitely want to be flexible, especially in this first year. So you can see that the Ride Leading and Teaching Mountain Bike Skills course can be waived if you currently have another mountain bike coaching certificate. That's usually through like IMBA, NICA, PMBI. If you have another one that you think is equivalent, please let me know. I'll add it to my list. Additionally, the field hours that we are showing as required should be reported this year and will be enforced starting next year. We're anticipating rolling out a level 3 coach level, and that would likely require maybe a wilderness first aid training and a 60 hours of field work requirement in order to be at that level. There may also be some additional clinics that we offer next year, and attending all of those types of clinics would be part of that requirement. And as I mentioned, that Ride Leading and Teaching Mountain Bike Skills course is going to be somewhat optional this year, but we are saying that your team has to have 2 coaches go through that training, and then any additional coaches may be able to act in a leadership role until more training becomes available. Now, the differences between level 1 and 2, like why you would want to do that, go through the extra hurdles there. are the approved activities when it comes to working with kids. Think of a level 2 coach as a rider, as a leader of your team. They can lead group rides and they can teach mountain biking skills. And it's a policy of MiSCA to never have an adult alone with a child. Therefore, all team activities require at least 2 certified coaches. Now that could be 1 level 2 coach and 1 level 1. It could be 1 level 2 and 5 level 1, a couple level 2. It doesn't matter what the balance is, but there has to be 2 certified, background checked, approved adults at any team event. Now, it happens, that a kid may be stranded, and they need a ride home or something like that, and you're waiting around for their ride to get there. Teams should develop a protocol in case this happens. So you want to make sure you always have 2 adults there. It is a thing. We understand it's probably going to happen. Just so happens that, you might be alone with the child. But we want to limit that, and it's not a policy of MiSCA to allow for that. Also, kind of this first bullet point on here at the bottom is to familiarize yourself with our Safe Kids policy. Now that's under the resources page on MiSCA, and you should understand what it means to be a mandated reporter in the state. There's actually some laws going through right now because of all of the news around, gymnastics in the state, at Michigan State particularly, and I want to stress that any alert we receive of abuse will be reported to the state without question with MiSCA. I don't care if I know the person or if it makes us look bad as an organization. It's the law, and I feel sad that I even have to talk about it. But just rest assured, any reports of abuse or anything of the nature will be reported. And as a MiSCA coach, that will also be your requirement. One of the changes in the creation of a league structure is an annual registration for MiSCA riders. Now, a lot of the other states have like an annual fee, and you pay one fee, maybe $250 a year, and it includes all of your program, and it includes all of the races. I love this. I love that layout. It means you don't have to worry about, registering for every race or worrying about, all the work that goes into single race day registrations. But I fully get it that you may not be able to attend all of the races, and so you may not want to pay for all the races, and that makes sense. And so we're not going to go that hardcore, at least in our first year. If typically in a lot of the other sports out there, you are going to pay kind of a one flat fee for the entire year. And if you do our full series registration, then you're basically getting that experience as well. But we just didn't want to force it on anybody. We know it's not really a normal thing for our state with the mountain biking culture to register for every single race at one time. So one thing that we added, like I mentioned, was an annual registration fee for our riders. All riders on your team, regardless if they're racing, must be registered with MiSCA in order to participate on the team throughout the year. Your riders will appear on your team roster in Sports Illustrated Play. And if they're not on your roster, they're not approved to participate. That's very important. All the waivers are included on the SI Play website. And so it means they don't have any of their waivers signed. They're not approved to be riding with your team. If you're hosting a clinic or inviting non-team members to participate, they must have all 3 waivers completed and signed by a parent or guardian. That's not the easiest thing to get done. The waiver now is about 6 pages. So I beg you, please register online. You don't want to deal with those paper registrations. If you do a paper registration, you have to mail those to MiSCA as soon as possible following the event. Our address is on all the waivers, so you can mail them to us. Now, unless there's a team at your school, riders are not required to join a team. It's strongly encouraged, though. The teams are the way to go. And we've actually budgeted about 10% of our race registration budget of how much we're expecting revenue to come in. We've expected 10% of that to go out as scholarships. So again, I'm saying please, 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 if there are any financial concerns at all, with your child's participation, apply for the scholarship. And we're going to do everything we can to get that covered. We have sponsors that are kind of lining up to take care of that if needed. But we have it budgeted over $3,000 to pay for kids that just can't afford those fees, and that's okay. We've also got an awesome group of current and previous MiSCA riders who are serving on our student advisory committee. They're completing several projects throughout the year, but really help to guide the organization through the lens of the student athlete. And we started this committee as well to get more girls on bikes. We noticed last year we had a kind of a downward trend in our varsity class. While our overall percentage was healthy, we noticed that we didn't have that elite level of athlete in our ranks, and we really want to nurture that. So we've already had 2 events in February geared toward 100% lady participation, and we have more events being added with 2 coming up already that are scheduled, including the Trail Maintenance Day in April and a clinic no drop ride in May. That's at the Island Lake Rec Area bike demo. Additionally, there's going to be kids that come to you and maybe they don't want to race, but you'd want them to come to the races and participate as part of the team. Put them in a leadership role on the team. There's captains, they're probably going to be racers, but they could be a team manager. They could manage your equipment. Maybe they get trained on how to be a mechanic at one of the local bike shops. Maybe they're in charge of your social media page, something like that. There's tons of jobs that any child or kid can do on your team without necessarily having to race, and they can still be part of your team. So again, please visit the MiSCA website for more information on these different programs. There's links underneath programs for all these different things. Now, we did have a question come in. Remember, if you have any questions, please type them into the questions box of GoToWebinar. That's the program that we're using today. And the question was, what is an indoor practice? So indoor practice would be like doing bike drills in like a gym or using trainers. And for indoor practices, you don't necessarily need somebody doing mountain bike skills training or leading a ride. And so this was coming up regarding like the difference between a level 1 and a level 2 coach. So it's more conditioning training than anything else. Now, let's talk about some teams. So like, what's the difference between our different types of teams? On race day, all teams compete against each other for 1 overall race award. We get about 1 trophy at every race for our top team. We take actually, the way it gets calculated, the top 4 JV and varsity riders combined. So it could be 1 JV, 3 varsity, 2 and 2, doesn't matter. The top placers in each category. And we add up their place scores, and the lowest score wins. So let's say you had 4 place finishers. Somehow your team is magic. Your score would be 4. If you had 4 second place finishers, then your score would be 8. And any mixture of that would give you your score. And again, the lowest score wins, so it's kind of like golf in that way. Now we also have a series award, which is where this differentiation comes into play. We actually define 2 different types of teams for our series award and in general when we're talking about our teams. First is similar to traditional school sports. Those are teams that are from the same school and would otherwise be eligible to compete in school sports for that school. So that could be a homeschooled kid or it could be someone who goes to a charter school, but they're still eligible to compete on the varsity team of that high school. They would still be eligible to compete for a school-based team. Now, our composite teams are collections of students from different schools. These are often bike shops or other youth-focused organizations, and we keep track of these 2 categories of teams during the whole season, and we award the top in each at the end of the year. So there will be a series points total awarded to our teams as well. It's calculated a little bit differently. It's based on how you placed in that single race, but that's all part of our rules. Okay, you got a couple more questions that came in. Okay, so one of the questions was, will you be covering mountain bike races and teams, or is it purely road cycling? So MiSCA is actually 100% mountain bike racing, or not racing, but mountain bike league. So we don't do any road cycling as a pure MiSCA activity. So we would only be participating with mountain bike activities. Another question, do students not associated with the team still have to pay $50? The answer to that is yes. So anybody who's a member of MiSCA as a whole is required to pay the annual fee of $50, and that is that's just a membership basically as part of MiSCA. So you're part of MiSCA whether or not you're on a team or not. There's that registration needed. Okay, another question about where do we kind of draw the line on having to register as a coach for a team or like a team volunteer? So there's a couple different options you can choose when registering. And the idea there is any team, or I'm sorry, any adult who is participating on your team would register as a coach, a level 1 coach. Now to do that, really all you have to do is pass the background check and concussion training. And drawing the line is pretty much if you're going to get on a bike, then you become a level 1 coach. If you're only going to be kind of volunteering at the races or helping to sell cookies at the races or something like that, or at different club events, then maybe you don't necessarily need to have that coach certification. But anytime you're going to be on a bike, then that would be required. And I think I mentioned it later, but as a head coach or a level 2 coach on a team, it's really your responsibility to ensure that all of your adult riders are covered under your insurance and as part of your team. Yep, and I have just a clarification point, and I want to be very clear. Any adult who rides with your team would need to be a level 1 coach, okay? Okay. Another question about exactly what the series is. So MiSCA is strictly a cross-country mountain bike race series. We don't do downhill or enduro or cyclocross or anything like that yet. Our name would suggest that we do have the ability to be able to do that one day, but we kind of have our hands full right now with just mountain biking. So currently it's just cross-country races. All right, so here's a representation of where our different teams are located throughout the state. And there's quite a few more, I believe, that I'm missing. So if you're on this call and you don't see your dot, let me know. But we have a pretty good distribution around Southeast Michigan. We're growing in the west side, and I know I'm missing quite a few over there, definitely. This is a list of our 2017 teams, so the ones I know that are kind of active. Again, a shout out to our Brighton team and Orange Crush for winning the series championships, respectively, for Scholastic and the composite championships. That's TJ and Jay Jones out there. Thank you, and good job. This is a list of the teams that are kind of like starting up, ramping up. And, again, if you're on the call and you're not on this list of the previous slide or this slide, let me know, and I'll make sure that we get the word out. The first step that I always say for a team to do is to create a Facebook page or a Facebook group, usually. And that's so that you have somewhere to direct people. If you make a flyer or anything like that, you want to be able to send them to a group so that they can talk there, or you can set up events on the group, you can do messages and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much, maybe 75% of people have Facebook. And so that's a good, easy way to communicate. And if not, then you can always put an email address on there too. But from there, it's really easy to communicate and create teams, create team events in your group. We'll talk about, once you're an official MiSCA team, there's a lot that you can do in SI Play as well. but you can only do that with members of your team. It's not really meant for recruiting new members or communicating to new members. Current members, current parents, current volunteers, it's really good at, but not necessarily new people. And I'm going to go into the rules now. We recently revised our rules to take into account some changes. And it's the rider, parent, and coach's responsibility to understand the rules. We do a pre-race meeting, but we never cover all the rules in full. Nobody would want to listen to that. It would take way too long. And from my experience, even the 5 minutes that I'm talking to the riders, they're usually tuning out by the end. So I'm only going to cover the ones in a pre-race meeting that are unique or that I've noticed issues with at previous races or have gotten complaints about. So please come to the races prepared, having read the rules and understanding them. And I do understand that, with younger kids, it's a little bit harder for them to have fully comprehended, 20 pages of legalese in a rule book. But they're pretty simple rules to follow. You stay on the trail and you follow good sportsmanship. Now, let me go back 1 second, I'm sorry. So this is a link to go to the rules. The 2018 rules are not there yet. So they will be there soon. I'll have to send like a mass email out to everybody once they're updated. But I'm going to cover some of the changes. Other than that, nothing much has changed in the year other than what I'm going to mention today. So the first rule change that we're making for 2018 is to loosen the restriction we had on GoPro cameras. We now allow cameras as long as they're not helmet mounted. Additionally, the camera must be secured for the entirety of the race. That means you can't be in like selfie mode riding down the hills. And the proper areas to mount a camera are either the rider chest or anywhere on the bike. As long as it's not on the helmet, we're pretty much okay with that. One note here is that this footage will not be viewed as part of a protest during the race. We really don't want to encourage this to be the reason that kids have cameras on their bikes, and evidence collection is not in the spirit of the rule change. We didn't, have the rule there originally to not have this. It was there for the safety of the kids, and we understand that loosening this should be okay. The helmet is where the danger lies. There's some studies that are out there, and they're still being researched on the effects of having a camera on your helmet and what the effects of that are in the event of a crash. This year we went from 5 to 6 races. Our rules were very specific for 5 races, so we needed to revise the rules to make it more clear. And now they're very specific for 5 or 6 races. And now they add clarity for that. It basically says you must start 3 races to qualify for series awards. We didn't change that number. We do understand that as we're growing the series, some of the races are further away. So again, it's a little bit harder to get to the races. And a missed race counts as your dropped race. So sorry, back up there. So you must start 3 races to qualify for the series, and we will drop your lowest score, assuming that you completed you started in all 6 races. So what that means is, like, if you show up to 5 races and you compete in all of them, you would have gotten like 100% participation in the series, and you wouldn't be docked any points for having missed 1 race, because we will drop your lowest score, and a missed race would end up being your lowest score. Now, if you attend all races and you're doing really well, you're placing top 5 every race. 1 race you have a mechanical and you come in 20th, or even worse, you don't finish, that race wouldn't count against you. We'd only count your top 5. And so that's basically the idea. We will take your top 4 of 5 in a 5-race series, or your top 5 of 6 in a 6-race series. And one of the most exciting things that we saw last year was the growth of our elementary and middle school categories. Previously, we had our elementary categories as co-ed. There were several reasons, but it's clear that we now have the participation to split the elementary categories by gender. So additionally, there were some concerns last year as well that the upper elementary category should definitely remain available to the beginner rider. There were some races where the upper elementary actually rode more laps than the lower elementary, and that could have been overwhelming for some of the kids. And so again, we just want to take a step back and make sure that we are being inclusive to all levels of riders that are coming to us. And also for that reason, lower and upper elementary will do the same race course and the same number of laps going forward. It doesn't matter how hot it is that day or how long the course is or short it is, they'll be doing the same course. And because of that, we're not allowing riders grades 3 or under to race up into the upper elementary category. This is similar to how we don't allow middle school riders to race up into the novice category. They're doing the same course, and it's not fair to those riders that are a little bit older but maybe the same skill level to then be competing against a more elevated younger kid. So if the lower elementary kids really want to do an extra lap, then they can join the middle school category and go to town there. And one reason why, again, they can do that is because we saw strong middle school growth last year as well. More than half of our riders were elementary or middle school last year, and that's a huge shakeup for us, and hopefully a huge sign of the growth to come in MiSCA. But we want to prepare our more advanced middle school riders for their future in JV. Therefore, we've added a middle school advanced category. Again, there will be boys and girls, both classes there. And this will use actually the same course as JV and varsity. And they'll probably just be doing one lap less than the JV. We're also looking at our race courses and trying to shorten the laps and do maybe more laps but less distance per lap. And that gives us a little bit more flexibility here. So maybe we could have JV do 4 laps. Varsity do 4 laps, JV do 3, and our middle school advanced do 2. But if we're talking 6-mile laps, doing 4 laps for JV is out of the question as far as MiSCA goes. So we're really looking at that and trying to make it so that we can do this. We got a question about, are there any rules against listening to music or having headphones on? Yes, so there are no music playing devices allowed during the race, whether it's an earphone or music played out loud. Neither of those are allowed from the rider. So with those category changes, we actually now have 14 different categories for the kids to ride in. I remember when I started with MiSCA in 2012, there was only 7. So it's really cool to see the growth and our ability to slot the riders into the correct category to truly fit their ability, age, and skill level, which is kind of one of our taglines that we say often. So let's run through what our categories are. And this will answer a question that just came up. So our highest level category is varsity. They're going to do, the longest distance. They're going to plan on being out there for an hour and a half to 2 hours at most racing. We have our junior varsity category. They're probably like a 75% of our varsity. And then we have our novice. So those 3 categories are our high school categories. So novice, JV, and varsity. Notice there's an asterisk on the novice. So we don't allow people to move up into our novice category. They do the same exact course as our middle school, and therefore any move-ups would be into the middle school category, not to novice. And we actually don't limit any move-ups necessarily. So if lower elementary rider was strong enough, they could totally ride in a varsity category if they really wanted to. There would probably be some questions about that, but we don't have a rule against it. And now we added in this middle school advanced category. It's a new category in addition to our middle school category. And I kind of explained what that difference was earlier. The novice and middle school actually do the same race course as the upper and lower elementary kids do. They usually just do an extra lap. And both those categories, now that we have the middle school advanced, are going to be seen more as a novice category. So it may be your first few years racing, or it might be your first year out of upper elementary, but you raced a few years before that. So usually any riders with a few years of race experience are probably going to be moving into the middle school advanced or the junior varsity categories to match their skill level. I'll just touch on the upper and lower elementary categories as well. So just to be clear on that too, there is a male and female category for every single category that's listed here. And that's what kind of gives us that 14 different categories. So we have 7 different skill levels and then 2 different genders for each one. Now, this is our race series for the year, the D&D Bicycles MiSCA race series. So D&D Bicycles is back sponsoring us again this year for the entire year. And we got a really nice distribution of race venues. Every year, we strive to provide the best race venues for our members. And many factors go into the decision process, including the location, trail quality, difficulty, where we're going to stage, how many volunteers we're going to need, or who we're going to get volunteers from, if the spectators are going to be able to see the riders coming through, adding some variety to the venues that we're adding. Of course, probably overall is safety. And that's one big reason why you don't see Brighton Rec Area and Island Lake on the list this year, is because we did have some safety concerns with those 2 venues crossing streets, riding along a street with traffic. And so those 2 venues have been removed at least this year, and so we can look at them a little bit stronger to just make sure that we can provide a safe environment at those locations. We also look at on-site facilities like parking and shelter, and also what support we're going to receive from the park and venue personnel. This year's calendar has 2 new venues, a returning favorite and 3 familiar classics to round out our 6-race schedule. And a brief synopsis on kind of each of the venues is here. So we're starting off at Lakeshore Park this year. It's different than our past few years where we started off at Addison Oaks every year. And we're starting off at Lakeshore Park, also known as the Tree Farm, because they're actually doing some construction to add parking and some structures to the front of their park. And so they're actually not accepting any reservations after Labor Day. So we had to get in before Labor Day, and luckily we already had that date kind of locked in as a day that we wanted to have a race. We had to move our Addison race, which was actually already scheduled, to September to accommodate that. But Lakeshore is always a perennial favorite, and this year we'll continue having the staging in that lower field where the soccer field is. And we're going to shorten the length and the number of loops depending on the race category. We understand last year there were some challenges there. We were a little bit aggressive on the difficulty level, and we saw that in our surveys. And we're really happy to kick off the series at Lakeshore. Second up is Lake Orion High School. MiSCA has raced at Lake Orion in the past, and after a few years away, we're excited to be back in 2018. It's located on the grounds of Lake Orion High School, and the trails are adjacent to the athletic fields. There's ample space for parking and staging and team tents, and there's a lot of access to the trails as well, which will be very spectator friendly. Next up is Fort Custer. Fort Custer is near Battle Creek, if you're not familiar. It's a pretty awesome trail. We're happy to add this as a new venue for the year, so it'll be new to us. The trails at Fort Custer are unique and fun for all abilities. The area was originally farmland until the government began using it as an Army training center during World War II. Some sections of the trail traverse through interesting historical features that are still visible today. But MiSCA will primarily be using the green loop, and course maps will be out soon once the thaw happens in the spring and we can get out there and really map out the course. There's plenty of room for staging and spectating too at Fort Custer. Addison Oaks, next up on the list. This is a return venue for MiSCA, accommodating park personnel, meticulously maintain trails, and great facilities always help things run smoothly in Addison. We'll be moving our staging area across the path, which will allow for a lot more room and improve safety. And this is a favorite venue. It's a gym, and we're really glad to be back in 2018. Every mountain bike race series can use a course with a little elevation change, and that's where Canonsburg comes in. With plenty of rolling hills, challenging climbs, and exciting descents, Canonsburg will not disappoint. There's ample room for staging again in team tents, which makes viewing and racer support accessible for all the families. This year, we'll be providing additional restroom facilities. That was an issue we had last year. Hopefully, the sand won't be as bad as it was last year. It's kind of something we can't control too much with the weather. But there will also be the food deck open in case you're going to be hungry out there at Canonsburg. We're looking forward to returning there this year. Last up on the list is Mid-Michigan Community College. They've been doing a few races there, like the Salt Shaker and Rush Shaker over the last few years. And this is our state championship race. It's going to be sponsored by Newton Timing this year. They're our race title sponsor. And it's going to, again, an exciting new venue for MiSCA. This trail is beautifully forested with many options for courses and trailside parking areas, which will give us a lot of room for team tents. It's on the campus of the Mid-Michigan Community College, so there's tons of area there for parking and staging. The trails are also easily accessed, and the venue will allow for an exciting course. Stay tuned again for course maps once we get out there in the spring and we can really plan for it. Now that's in the heart of the Lower Peninsula, just off I-127. So it's the furthest north race that we've ever done. So we're happy to get up there. I got some questions about the race schedule. So the race schedule is set in stone. All of our dates have been confirmed with the venues. We still have some other things to secure, but we don't anticipate any issues that would come up that would change the dates. Last year, we did have to change a date due to the venue, but we were very meticulous this year on choosing our venues. And so the new ones that we did add were looked at very thoroughly to make sure that they would be accommodating. Okay, another question about our age groups and the grades. So yeah, this would be your grade going into the fall school year. When you register on the miscabike.org/register, when you go there, it's going to ask you your current grade. The system knows that our races are happening next year. So when you register your children, you're going to register them in their current grade if you're doing it right now. I think after July 1st, it switches over, and it says the school year too. When you're registering, it'll say your grade for this school year. So right now it says 2017-2018. So just make sure you read those instructions and follow them so that that's clear. But yeah, it's going to be next fall's grade level is what you're signing into. Yeah, and we have Newton Timing at every single race. They've signed up as a sponsor this year for our final race again. So they'll actually be at all 6 of our races, Newton Timing. They do an awesome job. And that's one of kind of our biggest expenses of the year is really getting professional timing out there. And we debated, running the timing ourselves and buying all the equipment. And it's just a lot of work. And it's something that we kind of played with last year to see if it would make sense to have somebody else do it for us. And unanimously, it makes a whole lot of sense. They do an awesome job. They know what they're doing. And it relieves a lot of volunteer support and stress in the day to allow us to focus on what's going on with the riders and not so much on, the mechanics of a computer system and registration. You're actually going to get one chip for the entire season this year as well. When you register for the series, basically you're going to get, or not the series, I'm sorry. When you register for MiSCA, we'll be giving you like basically a bib number, and that will be your bib number for the whole year. There'll be a permanent plate, much thicker and nicer than any plate you've gotten at MiSCA before, and they'll have the timing tags on there for all the races. So as mentioned before, there is a $50 registration fee per rider, and that's an annual fee. Additionally, riders can register for all 6 races, and you'll receive an annual t-shirt. So that's our normal, I say normal, but it's a pretty cool shirt, but we've been doing it for the last few years, and we give that out for free for riders who participate in all of the races. That, for lack of a better word, is really our participation award. We don't necessarily call everyone up to the podium for being in all 6 races, but we do award you that shirt, you know, to wear proudly that you signed up for all the races. And most of our riders that do sign up for all the races do attend the full series. Now, we didn't increase our fees at all for the race day expenses, but we did increase the fee. I should reword that. So we didn't increase our race registration fees. They're all in line with what they were last year, but the race day fee, we did increase it by $5. So there's basically a $10 late fee if you do not register online. And that's because with this league process, the registration is going to be more complex moving forward, and we really want everyone to register online. It's much simpler. All the forms are maintained there. All your emergency contact information is easily accessible. And again, I mentioned this a minute ago, but we're going to have some awesome number plates this year, and the riders will keep and reuse those for the entire series. Okay, so I'm going to add some clarity. I might have misspoke on the grade levels. So when you're registering today in the Sports Illustrated Play system, you can add your children today. When you add your children today, it's going to ask what their current grade level is. So you're going to put in their current grade level. If you start registering for races today, when you register for a race, it's going to ask you what category you want to register for, and that category is based on grade level. So if you're registering for a race today, that doesn't happen until next fall. You're going to need to understand that maybe if, let's say the child's in 5th grade today, you would be registering for them for the middle school category when you register them for races. But when you fill out their information at registration in the system, you'll put their current grade in the system. So no other point will you be asked for what their grade is, but when you register for what races they will participate in, make sure you're following up with what their fall grade level would be. Okay. We don't have a concern necessarily with quotas for how many riders are going to be in each category. We've never limited the field as of yet, and we're changing the rule. It's not in our list. It's not like something that really affects people, but we're changing the rule to if we have more than 100 riders in a category, then we will have separate wave start times for the single category. So let's say JV boys, which would be the closest probably to get to that level, and they're around 50 right now. Let's say they were at 100, we would actually have 2 separate start times for that category. And it would be a little bit more like a time trial, but that way just to maintain safety for the wave, for the mass starts. Okay, so registration is open today to get you set up in your SI Play account. So again, go to miscabike.org/register. You can set up your team. You can sign up any adults can sign up in there today, and you can sign up what children belong in your account. So in SI Play, you're going to have an account that's tied to your adults that can manage the account, and then you have your children who you are managing, which races they're going to, what teams they're on, and so on. All of your emergency contact information and waivers and everything like that is all in the system. So that is quite different than what we've done in the past because, again, we're doing this league structure. And so the software tool that we're using is called Sports Illustrated Play, and I'll often say SI Play instead because it's just faster. I'm probably, after today, I probably will never say Sports Illustrated Play again. But you can go there to register as a coach as well, and a rider. So today, or I'm sorry, March 1st is when that's going to open up your coach and rider annual registration. And you're also going to use SI Play to organize race day volunteers. So all of our races will be in the system, and you can register to volunteer to do course marshaling, and we'll talk about some other things that you can do as a volunteer in just a moment. And again, we're recommending that we avoid race day registration. We're going to prefer everything be on the online system. It'll be the same idea as previous years where registration will close on the Friday before a race online, but then you can register same day if you'd like to pay that $10 late fee. SI Play actually also gives us a really nice system for team management as well. So they have a smartphone app and communication tools for coaches, parents, and riders to kind of keep in touch, see who's going to different races and events, and all that is all in the system. Okay. There's no minimum number of people who can join a team. So if you're starting a new team, there's no worries there. You can start a team with one kid if you wanted to. Now, in order to be scored in a race, you have to have 4 JV and varsity riders combined total. So again, it could be 2 JV, 2 varsity, 1 and 3, it doesn't matter, but 4 riders need to be within the JV or varsity categories to be scored against the other teams in that race. There's also no residential requirement, so residency requirement. So you don't have to live in the state of Michigan to race in a MiSCA race or to be on a MiSCA team, regardless of where the team is located. The team could even be in another state technically, and they could race within the Michigan series. Okay, so let me real quick, I'm going to go over the Sports Illustrated Play system. We'll see if I can get it up on the screen that people can see. So when you go to miscabike.org/register, it's going to look like this, except for if you've never been there before, it's not going to know your email address. So I'm going to go through the process as if I've never done this before. You're going to do create an account here at the bottom. Throw in your email address. Okay, and then you want to create a password. So just like signing up for any other account that you may have done online, it's the same idea. I typed something wrong. Oh no, I've already had an account. Let's just do, this doesn't really matter today. All right, so once you create an account, you're going to be asked registration information, kind of like you would normally expect. Let's see. Okay, so just fill out that info, and let's see, you probably don't need that. Create an account. Okay, so now you can add more adults to your account. So let's say like I'm the husband on the account. I can add my wife, or she can come in and add herself later. But basically, you can have multiple adults on an account who can manage the registrations for the riders. I'm going to skip that for now. And what you'll notice is I have options here to create new children and new adults on my account. I'm going to go ahead and do a new child. And when I do that, I'm going to be prompted again with some more information. And here you can put in, you know, the info for your child. So here is where it says current grade 2017-2018. So this will change automatically. So you don't have to come in here every time and change it. Every time your child changes grades, it'll automatically assume that they moved up a grade. Now, you have the option to put in your child's email here, and that will help them get communication in SI Play. So via, you know, the smartphone app or text messages, they'll be alerted of team activities and communication from the coaches if you put their email address here and also their phone number. In addition to putting the phone number here, you do have to opt in to text messaging, which is on a separate screen. There's actually a guide, which I'll attach to this meeting, that goes over the registration process and like how to actually get registered. So I'll make sure I include that here as well. I'm going to throw that in here right now. So in the GoToWebinar, you'll see there's some PDF links that you can download. There's registration guides for coaches and riders. I just put those in there. And there's also the Welcome to MiSCA, which is the copy of this PowerPoint. So you'll have all the links that are in the PowerPoint. You'll get those too. So there's instructions for all this stuff in there. And I'm just going to kind of go through the motions real quick here. But it does ask a lot more questions we've ever asked before. So, you know, asthma or EpiPens, that kind of thing, allergies are all in the system. So I need a phone number. Okay, so once you have your rider in the system, it's going to make sure that you're 18 years old. So only adults are allowed to use this system to register the riders. And that's because there are some waivers that need to be signed. Once you're in the system, you'll get access to the coach and rider annual registration. You can see it doesn't open until March 1st. But once it's opened, it's very simple to click on it and register for it. There's going to be a bunch of questions you get asked again for each event, which will mostly be, you know, accepting different things like participation rules and, you know, waivers of liability and all that good stuff for insurance purposes. But this is where you would go. You can also register for the entire 6-race series, and these will be in a better order when it actually goes live. I've talked to the software company about that, and it will be in the correct order. So you will have to always register for this annual registration. That's required. And then everything below that is optional. So if you don't want to race, you don't have to, and you don't have to register for anything else. You just have to be part of the annual. And then if you want to race, you can choose which races or the entire 6 races combined in one registration, which just saves you a whole bunch of clicks, basically, and saves us a lot of time processing the different registrations, too. Okay. We have a question about middle school being included as part of the team scoring. That hasn't come up yet in our board discussion, so I can bring that up again. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. In the other leagues, middle school is usually a separate team, so it's not counted as part of the high school team. And so I could see that's probably what it would be, where you would probably need 4 middle school riders to count on the middle school team. And, you know, it could be advanced and the standard class. And that opens up, you know, maybe that we have elementary as well. But again, like I said, we haven't discussed it this year, but I'm going to take that note back and we'll have the discussion. And it could be added before the race series. We have a lot of time still to figure all that out. So one thing else that's a little bit of a change is the way that we're going to be working with volunteers this year. So we depend heavily on the support of volunteers, and we actually are asking that parents make a commitment to volunteering at one or more of our races. Really, if every parent just came to one race to volunteer, that would be sufficient for us to have enough volunteers for the whole year. And I know there's a lot of parents out there that volunteer to all 5 races or 3 or 4 races. So if we could just get one parent at each race, we would be totally fine. We'd be more than fine if we had that. So in addition to that, teams are actually going to be required to support the MiSCA events at any race that they're at by providing 1 or more volunteers depending on how many riders they have at the race. So if a team has more than 10 riders, we're going to ask that you bring 2 volunteers to a race. If you have under 10 riders, then you would just bring 1 volunteer to a race. And that's just, again, to maintain that we have enough volunteers to run the race. Now, the question was asked earlier kind of what the line is for volunteers and who needs a background check or who has to be a coach, who has to be certified. So race day volunteers will be operating under the supervision of MiSCA race day staff. And for that reason, they're not required to hold a coaching certificate. The online registration, when they go through to say, hey, I want to volunteer to be a course marshal tomorrow, it will bypass the requirements that are there for the normal background check and concussion training and that stuff. Some of the things that you can do on race day as a parent or any other volunteer is you can help with course marking and our start-finish setup. As we kind of grow and become even bigger, that is becoming even more of a handful job to get done, and we need more people to get there early and help us out. The same goes with parking and traffic control. So having 100 cars at a race was manageable, and now maybe having 300 is a little bit harder. So you're kind of that the first person to talk to somebody on race day and help them, direct them to where they need to go, and help out making sure that the road closures that are there stay closed. People aren't moving cones and things like that. We always need help at registration. That's helping with the same-day race registrations or people who just have questions about what the race course looks like. And they'll probably also help sell merchandise and cowbells and that kind of thing as well. In addition, we always have our course marshals. So last year we split our elementary category riders from our middle school riders. We're still planning on doing that for 2018. So we have a lot of parents that like to ride with the elementary riders, and they're considered course marshals. And then we also need course marshals for the other races. Usually for elementary, we're stocked. We have tons of course marshals, but we can always use more for our middle school and high school grade levels on the course. Then there's always course cleanup. So we marked the course and we set up this awesome start-finish area. We always need help cleaning it up as well. Again, our goal is to leave no trace, as you may be familiar with, kind of one of those IMBA principles. And therefore, we really need a lot of help picking up all those pink flags and making sure that we're not leaving any litter on the course. So we're getting toward the end here, so if you do have some questions, make sure you're typing them in the GoToWebinar box. I have one question on insurance that I'm going to get to. I wanted to kind of hold it till the end. But I'm happy to answer any more questions that you guys might have, so please type those in there. So upcoming events, we have a webinar in March, the 26th. That registration will open up very soon. If you click on that link, the registration is open today. I just haven't really promoted it at all yet. But that will be learning the ins and outs of starting a successful MiSCA team. So something that we didn't really cover today is, well, how do I learned how to start my team, like how to register and what teams exist, but how can I be successful? And so we're going to learn some of the tips and tricks from the Huron Valley team that started last year, and they actually grew to over 40 riders in their first year. It's crazy. Not expected, and they just blew it out of the water. One of the main tips is just being consistent, having group rides 2 to 3 times a week regularly. And that's going to come into play, when you go to these ride leading and teaching MTB skills courses. We're going to talk about that a little bit about, what it means to be a ride leader and how you lead a group ride, but also how to teach mountain biking skills specifically to kids. So not just in general mountain bike skills, but how do you maintain that coach relationship with the children? And those are coming up in April. We have 2 different dates. The April 14th date is in Novi, which is near Southeast Michigan in Metro Detroit. And then the April 22nd date is in Rockford, which is the Grand Rapids area. They're all-day events, so it's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We'll be providing lunch. So, bring your bike and your helmet and, a good attitude, some extra tubes in case you get a flat or something like that. But there'll be plenty of emails once you register for the event on what to bring and all that stuff. We also have our girls-only events that I mentioned earlier coming up. So in April, we have a trail day at Hickory Glen, which is in Commerce. And then we also have a fit clinic and no-drop ride that'll be at the bike demo at Island Lake in May. MiSCA will be there with a tent, but we'll also be having that fit clinic and no-drop ride. So I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. We really couldn't have grown like we did in the last couple of years without their support. I've been working with our 2017 sponsors, and most of them have already come back and said they're going to support us in 2018, which is kind of a really good sign that we met expectations last year. But I want to quickly recognize, our top sponsors. So D&D Bicycles is a pro-level sponsor. They're our race series title sponsor. Newton Timing has renewed as an elite level sponsor and a race title sponsor of the Mid-Michigan Championship race. Then we also have at expert level Cycle Therapy, American Cycle and Fitness, Fraser Bicycle, KLM Bike and Fitness, Treeport Bikes, and Bloomer Cyclocross presented by the KLM Cold Stone Race Team. This year, KLM Bike and Fitness and then the Bloomer Cyclocross race are going to be kind of dividing and conquering and becoming as two separate sponsors for MiSCA. So I really want to thank everyone for attending today. I do have some questions coming in that I will address momentarily, but this is like really the kickoff of the year. We have had a few events already with our Girls on Bikes committee, but this is really kind of the first mass event. We've had really good feedback. Over 140 people registered for the webinar, so I'm really excited to get some feedback. If you have any questions, again, after the webinar is over, you can email me. My email address is on here. If you're interested in getting more active and volunteering with MiSCA, please email Jody Giles at jgiles@miscabike.org. It's also on the slide. And if you just have some general question or information you want to share, feel free to email the entire MiSCA board. There's 8 of us, and we're eager to hear what you have to say, and always willing to kind of accept feedback and grow from that. Again, if you do have more questions that I haven't addressed or just in general, please type those into the GoToWebinar questions box. There is no way for me to unmute your phone, so I can't just have you ask a question out loud. So I only get to hear my voice today, unfortunately. So I'm going to read through some of the questions real quick, and then we'll address them. All right, so we have a question about how to decide, you have a high school rider, they've never raced before, but they're a very good rider. Where should they fall at? Should they be novice, JV, or varsity? I would say if they're a really good rider, then they're probably a JV rider. And if they've never raced ever before, that's probably where I would slot them, as long as they're pretty adept on a bike, if they've been riding a while, a few years. Typically what we say is if this is their first year racing, that you would ride novice. But again, if your rider has quite a bit of skill, then they might move up to the JV. We don't limit that move up, so that can happen. That can happen at the parents or the coach's will. One thing I will say, I forgot actually what I was going to say. Let me see what this is that if you're on a team, the coach will have a much better idea of where they should fit. And also they'll be riding with other teams or other riders throughout the year, and they're really going to kind of feel where they fall into. And the coaches have experience with previous years and where riders' skill levels fit. We do have in our rules, and I will cover it next week as well, or I'm sorry, not next week, but next month on the webinar, is kind of where to slot riders at based on their skill level. but basically we say like 45 minutes to an hour is novice, an hour to an hour and a half is JV, an hour and a half to 2 hours is varsity, and that's how long you could expect them to be riding their bikes at a race, going as fast as they can. Okay, there's a question about if there is a recording of the webinar. So yeah, there will be a recording you can watch after the webinar is over. You'll get it emailed automatically to you in a couple hours. There's a question about if you register as a level 1 coach and you're riding with the team, you can't teach mountain biking skills, but you might want to give pointers to your own child or your rider. I think that's okay to give pointers to your own kid. It's when it becomes a group session or a training of mountain biking skills, when it becomes a different area that you're not necessarily trained for through MiSCA, and therefore we want to limit that activity. If you're riding with your child alone or whatever, obviously that's going to be fine. If it's in a group setting, that would definitely be something one-on-one that you could cover with your kid. Preferably, probably not within earshot of the other kids, so that you're not training the other children at the same time. Charlie Walker, you asked a question about if there's coaches and teams that we can work with in our area. I don't know what your area is, so if you could type in the questions box what your area is, that would be helpful. But if you go to miscaBike.org/teams, there's a map of where all the teams are, and there's actually a contact. If you click on the icon of where the team is, it'll give you contact information for the head coach of that team. So you can email them or call them. I'm not sure if their phone number is on there. I think it is, though. So you can email them, call them to get more information about practicing with their teams. Yeah, in the Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids area, we have 3 different teams there. So again, if you go to that website, the West Michigan Coyotes is probably the biggest team right now out there, and they really are blowing up this year. So that would be a good team to latch onto to ride with. There's also Speed Merchants is starting a team, and the Grand Rapids Dirt Dogs have a team as well. So yeah, there's a question about attending the clinic if you're not associated with a team. The answer to that is definitely yes. So you can attend the clinic if you're not associated with a team today. That's totally fine. You still have to email registration at miscabike.org and let us know that you're interested in participating, and then you'll get a participation code. Okay, another question about how does a rider race if they don't have a team? Yeah, so what they're going to do is they're actually going to join the same way through the sign up on Sports Illustrated Play. There's going to be a drop-down list through that process to pick your team. If you leave it as like none selected, I think is what it's called, or not defined, something like that, then you'll be slotted as like an independent rider. So you don't have to be you don't have to be on a team to race or to ride throughout the year or to be at different MiSCA activities throughout the year. You can definitely be an independent rider. Okay, another question about if you start a team, is there a minimum number of rides you have to do a week? There's not a minimum number of rides. I would say that a successful team, which is I hope what you'd want to do if you're starting a new team, a successful team would have 2 rides a week, and then when you get closer to race time, probably closer to 3 rides a week. Usually it's like 2 during the week, 1 on Saturday before the race to test out the race course, and then you'd be riding on Sundays. That's usually during the race period. Other times throughout the year, it might be 1 or 2 rides throughout the week. But the reason why I say that is because successful teams are consistent teams. So you really have to be dedicated to say, okay, every Wednesday, every Thursday, whatever day it is, we're going to ride no matter what. And maybe there's a rain day or something like that. but every week we're definitely going to ride as a team. It's going to take maybe a few weeks for you to gain up to have even maybe more than 2 or 3 kids show up, but that's fine, and that's how it's going to grow. The one time they show up and you're not there is probably the last time they're going to show up. So you really need to be consistent about it, communicate well with your team. All of that communication can be housed in Sports Illustrated Play, which really helps. So if you're canceling a practice, you can text everyone and say, hey, you know, it's raining out, we're not going to do it today, or we're not feeling well, something like that. But consistency is key. Again, next month, the webinar is going to touch a lot on how to have a successful team, and we'll talk about all that. The next webinar is March 26th. If you go to the MiSCA website again, it's available under the events all ready to register, but you'll definitely get an email to register, and there's a Facebook event for it too. We don't have a family discount per se, but this is where we do have a scholarship program. So if it's a financial burden on you to have multiple kids in the race series, and we get it, it's not free, and there are expenses involved. So if there's any financial concern at all with your participation in MiSCA, we do not want that to be a deciding factor in your participation. So there's a form that you can fill out, submit it to us, and let us know you would like some support there, and we'll give you a coupon code basically to help you out once you're approved. But last year we didn't turn away anybody who asked us for support, and this year we have budgeted I think it's like 5 times the amount that we had last year. It might be even more than that. So we're definitely ready and willing to support you in any way that we can. So if financial factors are a concern, please let us know, and we'll help you out. So last year's winners, the question is, are the last year's series winners required to move up regardless of age? The answer to that is no. So I'm not sure what the exact rule is. I think the rule is if you come in first place in 4 of the 5 races, it's in the rules, I'm sorry, I just don't have it in front of me, then you are required to move up. So there are some required move-ups involved, but just for winning the series doesn't mean that you are required to move up. I'm going to pull up those rules real quick because I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing. So the rules are on the website, and again, these are the current rules that haven't been updated since last spring or summer. But this is where you can find those, and they'll be updated as we move along this year. And let's see. Okay, let's see. So mandatory upgrades, a category upgrade from beginner, which is our novice class, to JV, or from JV to varsity will be mandated if in the prior year the rider placed first in their final category 2 or more times within a class size larger than 5 riders. Tracking, we already started tracking in 2016 for the 2017 year. We're updating this rule. So basically, is if they won first place in novice or JV twice, then they are required to move up. So that probably does mean that likely the series winners from novice and JV would be required to move up for this year. And this is another thing that we hadn't discussed either, is with middle school, this could also be a factor there. So I'm assuming that the middle school rider who won 4 or 5 races last year is probably going to want to move into middle school advanced anyways, but they would be required to as well. If they won first place more than twice. A question about race runs or warm-ups on race day. So the race course is open before your race starts, or I should say before any racing starts. So Typically the races start around 10 a.m. We're also looking at start times of the races this year because we understand we would kind of like to start a little bit earlier and end a little bit earlier than last year. So we're looking at that, but basically the race course is only open before any racing starts that day. And then also the day before, you're welcome to ride the course. It may not be fully marked, but the race course will be published online much farther ahead than that week. So you should have a few months to practice that course out if you want to try it out. So we have a question about Sundays being our race day. And we've heard this the last couple of years since we changed from Saturdays to Sundays, or we used to kind of do a mix, some Saturday, some Sunday. I can just say that we're probably not going to move from Sunday to Saturday. And I understand that Sunday, a lot of people go to church, and now you're giving up, 6 weekends in 9 weeks, I think it is, from not going to that family time. And so I do understand it. The challenge for us is it's basically impossible to set up a race course on the same day anymore. So we basically have to mark the course, flag it the day before, and then we do all we can to get the race, like start-finish area set up in time for the races to start. The other states, again, I can tell you, they usually do like a 2-day event where on Saturday people go there and they pre-ride the course and they camp there, and it's like on-site camping. It's a huge event, and then the next day is the race day. Some of them even do the middle school races on Saturday and then the high school races on Sunday. And that's just because they have like 1,000 kids, and it's too big to maintain on just one day. So I can definitely tell you that I don't foresee us moving back to Saturday races just because of the way that the growth is moving and how much work it is to try to put the race on. It's also really hard to get volunteers to come on a Friday during the day to mark a course. And in the fall, we're dealing with limited daylight hours as well. So it's basically somebody taking a day off work in order to make that happen for 6 weeks in a row, or 6 weeks in the fall. So we have a question too about kind of some more complex terrain that you may come across, like jumps or berms or anything like that. Honestly, with MiSCA, we're trying to limit the amount of exposure to those things. And we do experience some of them, like at Novi Tree Farm. There are some kind of cool features there. The feedback that we've gotten that those features are a little bit above where our skill levels are as an organization. So those things will probably not be happening very much in MiSCA. And those are things that you can definitely do on group rides and for fun, but they probably just won't be in a race course on a Sunday for MiSCA. So I think, so yeah, another question about timing. So we are going to be using chip timing with laps on it at every race this year. Newton Timing is sponsoring us. They're our official timer of MiSCA. So every race will have Newton Timing there with chip timing. And okay, I think the last question that we have then is on insurance. So, so the way that insurance works is that as a team, you will sign up for MiSCA. There will be some paperwork and you will get an insurance certificate as a team. That certificate then will basically cover you, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but basically like $1 million in general liability, yada, 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 as a team in case something were to happen and the team itself were to get involved in litigation, okay? Now MiSCA is not an insurance company, and I want to stress that. Basically, your involvement in MiSCA covers you under our insurance. It doesn't mean that you're buying insurance from being part of MiSCA. Basically, it's not safe for anybody to be operating without that coverage. So basically your team will have an insurance certificate. Any riders or coaches that are not attached to a team will be under the general MiSCA program, and that's why you have to register for the annual registration, even if you're not on a team, because if something happens and a parent were to feel like if we published a race course and then the rider went out on that race course the week before the race and there was a tree down and something happened, maybe the parent would feel that MiSCA was liable for that and decide to litigate that matter. Even though waivers were signed and whatnot, they could still come to MiSCA and say, hey, I did this because you told me to. So for those reasons, that's why nobody is in MiSCA officially unless they're registered as a MiSCA rider. So that's if you're not part of a team. If you're part of a team as a coach or a rider, then you're covered under that team's insurance. And again, you have to be registered, having gone through your entire background check and submitted all of your first aid and CPR certification information in order to be registered as your MiSCA coach. I should say, if you register as a level 2 coach, if you meet the level 1 requirements, then you would be covered under your insurance, having met the background check and the level 1 requirements. But you wouldn't be ready to lead a team until you get that first aid CPR, go through your skills training and whatnot coverage. So I don't want to get too in the weeds of like what it covers and what it doesn't cover, but basically as kind of an umbrella statement, it's going to cover your activities as a coach or a rider or a parent in the program, as long as you're participating in activities that are supporting that program. So, for example, a question was about driving in the car on the way. So if there was a car accident or something like that, you would be covered under car insurance, not under MiSCA's insurance. And again, if, say, the parent wanted to sue you because you were acting as a MiSCA coach driving the car, then in that case, it's possible that you'd be covered under the MiSCA insurance because you're acting as a MiSCA coach. Again, you're not buying insurance for joining MiSCA, but you're covered under MiSCA's insurance. I know it's kind of vague. I don't have all the insurance information in front of me. That will come out along with frequently asked questions and all that good stuff in the next few weeks. That will all be announced. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I appreciate, everyone who stayed on an extra half hour here with me. I apologize, I went over a little bit, and I'm glad I was able to kind of go through some of those questions. Again, if you have some follow-up questions, feel free to email me. My email is on the screen, and I'll be happy to take care of those offline. Again, look out for any MiSCA communication coming up. We should have an email coming out tomorrow, probably, letting you know about registration opening up and kind of giving some people a recap of today's webinar. But again, if you're on the call, you'll get a recording of today's call, and you can feel free to share that with other people as well. But yeah, awesome. So happy to be part of this. Glad you guys were able to join me as well. Thanks, guys. Do students not associated with a team still have to pay $50?